us with a word of prayer. Thank you.
So let us bow our heads and pray. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity to come together under your will. We pray that all deliberations today may be for the betterment of not only the society, but also for all the members of the public. We pray all this through Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Thank you very much, Faith. So as I said, our focus today is on devolution, and our speakers will be the Honorable Cabinet Secretary for Devolution, Mr. Eugene Wamalwa. Karibu sana Waziri. We also have Mr. Elijah Abasa. He's joining us online from Westminster Foundation for Democracy. And we have Miss Rosemary Jaramba. Miss Rosemary, karibu sana. We also have Mr. Eric Theuri, who is the chair for LSK Nairobi branch. Karibu sana, Mr. Chair, to the panel. And this panel is going to be moderated by council members Bernard Kipkoech and Erin Kabita. So karibuni sana. I now hand over the program to the moderators of the event so that we can start off. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council Member Caroline Mudheu. I'll ask my co-moderator, Bernard Ngetich, to introduce our panelists, then we can start off. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my good friend, Erin Kabita. Ladies and gentlemen, this is another beautiful morning. Our conference is on, and we're so privileged to have 4 panelists, as already introduced by Caroline Mudheu. I would very quickly give a synopsis of their bios, so that as they continue to deliberate and to address the various issues that are before them, would already have an idea. Of course, some of these panelists are eminent members of the society. They would require no introduction, but I'm going to very quickly give a synopsis. I will not move in any specific order. I will start with Eric Theuri. Eric Theuri is a practitioner, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. He is a partner at Makala, Theuri and Company Advocates in Nairobi. Eric Theuri is a former council member of the Law Society of Kenya. He continues to serve the membership currently as the chair of Nairobi branch of the Law Society of Kenya. That is a synopsis of Eric Theuri. We're going to get a lot from him in the course of these deliberations. We have Mr. Elijah Ambassa. Elijah is a person who oversees parliamentary strengthening program at Westminster Foundation for Democracy in Kenya. We're privileged to have him this morning. We have Ms. Rosemary Njaramba. Rosemary Njaramba is a lawyer. She's also the head of legal at the Council of Governors. We're privileged to have this wonderful lady among our stars this morning. Last but not least is Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, EGH. That is a decoration that is already earned. Eugene Wamalwa is the current Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Devolution and Arid and Semi-Arid areas in this country. That is serving currently in the Cabinet of the Republic of Kenya until the 26th of January 2018, he was the Cabinet Secretary for Water and Irrigation. He's also a former minister in the previous constitutional dispensation for justice. Eugene is also an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. He joined the University of Nairobi after accomplishing his secondary education, where he undertook his bachelor's degree, and of course, he's been to the Kenya School of Law. He was admitted to the bar in the year 1995, and thereafter joined private legal practice before joining the murky waters of politics, where he's also served in parliament. I'm not very sure if he's still a politician. Today he would confirm to us, because cabinet secretaries, as we are told, do not participate in murky politics. They only do policies. Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, you will tell us. One of the primary attainments in his career was representing the current president of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, in a presidential election petition in the year 2001 against opposition leader then Kizza Besigye. He won in that case. That is a synopsis of the bio of Honorable Eugene Wamalwa. We're very lucky this morning to have him around, and I'm sure he's going to address a lot of our concerns and issues. Thank you very much, Madam Herin Kabita.
Thank you very much, Bernard Kipkoech. Now we'll start the questioning and proceed on from there. My first question will go to Honorable Eugene Wamalwa. Waziri, Article 174 of the Constitution outlines the objective of devolution. 10 years on, after implementing our Constitution, what has been the impact of devolution in the country?
Thank you very much. May I start by thanking you for having me here today, and also thanking the President of the LSK and the Council for giving us the opportunity to come and share in this very critical exercise during this Legal Awareness Week. I was last invited by the former chair, Eric Mutua, when I was Minister for Justice, and I participated in this. So it's been a while since I participated in this, and I'm very happy to have the opportunity to come today and to say that indeed, as a country, we are happy with the progress we've made so far under the new constitution. It's been 10 years, and this year we're marking the 10th year when we celebrate our new constitution that we promulgated in 2010 in August. During this period, we've been able to successfully implement the new system of governance in Kenya, which is devolved. And we have been able to do this within a record time, where we have formed 47 county governments that are up and running. And as we speak, this country has seen tremendous change in terms of its governance, in terms of involving the people in decision-making in their localities, as well as devolving resources to every corner of our country that had not been achieved before under the centralized system of government. This is the system we had at independence, but with time we were able to shift from a bicameral parliament, from a devolved system at independence, from regional governments back to the centralized system that has been there for the last over 40 years until 2013, when we now implemented this. So can we say devolution is working? Yes, it is. I think all you have to do is travel the length and breadth of this country, and to counties that had been neglected, I would say, that have been left behind in terms of development, particularly the marginalized areas in northern Kenya. There are counties that have for the first time seen tarmac roads that had not been there. There are counties where people had to travel to Nairobi to get simple treatment or equipment, medical equipment like CT scans. You would have someone traveling all the way from Turkana to Eldoret, Moi Referral Hospital, over 300 kilometers just to access this. But with this devolved system of government, with the devolved resources, people are able to look at their priorities, make decisions, and utilize these resources to change their lives. So I would say, yes, the objects of devolution under Article 174 of our Constitution have been achieved, but not without challenges. We have challenges that we are facing, because even as we are devolving resources, as we are devolving power to the people to make their own decisions, we have also in the process devolved corruption. And this is the biggest challenge that we are facing today. The biggest threat to devolution remains corruption. Even as we look at how we can enhance these resources with the ongoing national conversation on BBI and enhancing the allocation from 15% to 35%, we are seeing corruption as a big threat to devolution. And the other issue also is that counties are still over-relying on the national government, on the national treasury and what is given from the center. In terms of on-source revenue, we are seeing many counties struggling. They are not generating much, and this is one area that there's room for improvement. After 10 years, we can say counties should be able to do more. They should be able to do a bit more on their own source revenue instead of over-relying on what comes from the national. Under the old system, you'll be surprised that there were former local authorities. If you look at the County Council of Murang'a, when you look at the previous administrations, Murang'a County Council was one of the richest county councils in Kenya. They were actually generating more. That at some point they could even talk of lending to the national government. The county government of Bungoma, at one time, there was a famous leader called Pascal Nabwana, who wrote to the Queen and wanted to lend to England, because Bungoma County was one of the richest counties. What has happened? How come we have counties today that are not collecting as much revenue as the former local authorities? So this is one area that even as we look at the success in the devolution journey, there's room for improvement, and as national government, we have generated policies, and the policy on on-source revenue is one policy that is in place now. But we want to look at how we can work with the counties, urge them to embrace more technology in terms of their revenue collection, in terms of their revenue generation. And we believe that once we have automated the revenue collection, we'll see counties collecting more and generating more resources locally. So 10 years, have we succeeded? We can say we are succeeding, but we are not yet there. There's still room for improvement. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. As a follow-up question to Waziri, Eugene Wamalwa, who is currently overseeing implementation of devolution. Waziri, you paint a very good picture of devolution, which I think is very good news for Kenyans. You however regret that we may have devolved corruption to the counties. Some people, Waziri, allege that these county governments that we have today are glorified county councils. When you talk about corruption, is the problem the infrastructure of our counties, that is the legal infrastructure, or it's the bad habits that we have as Kenyans? What do you think is the problem, Waziri, so that we have we devolved corruption instead of services to some county governments?
I think the main objective really under Article 174 is to devolve resources and the power to the citizen and the public to participate in decision making and in prioritizing development within their locality. But the truth is that Kenya, we've done very, very well in many aspects. Globally, we are one of the the best performing African countries in the ease of doing business. I think we've steadily progressed. I think was it 136? But now we are coming down to the top 50 in terms of the ease of doing business. But when you look at the ranking in terms of corruption, we are still doing badly. And it is something that we need to work together. It will not take the president alone to win the war on corruption. It will take the president, the national government, working together with the governors and the counties to rid us of this cancer of corruption. So it is something we have had in our DNA for quite some while now. And I remember we had the Kenya We Want conference before the end of President Moi's regime. And what we came up with was that the biggest threat to our development, why we were left behind by the so-called Asian tigers. We were at par with South Korea, Malaysia, and Singapore at independence. But along the way, we were left behind, and the biggest threat has been corruption. Billions of shillings, instead of going towards development, we have this money going into pockets of people, not just at the counties, at the national level also. But what the president has done is declared total war on corruption. And for the first time, we are seeing a leader who is leading from the front. We have seen arrests, we have seen prosecutions of top government leadership, right at the highest level of government, from cabinet ministers to principal secretaries to governors. We have governors who are facing charges before different courts. So we want to say that we must strengthen the institutions, and this is why we need all the support for our institutions, so that instead of politicizing corruption, we must institutionalize the fight against corruption. And I believe this is how we're going to win it, and it will take all of us to be able to win this war. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Waziri. The next question goes to eminent panelist, Madam Rosemary Njaramba. And my question, Madam Njaramba, is this. Kenyans were treated in the last 2 months to some drama, razzmatazz, and circumlocution by our Senate and politicians generally on matters sharing of revenue to the counties. A lot of light went with the politics and the drama in Senate. Are you able to explain to Kenyans, Madam Njaramba, what were the parameters of sharing revenue at the Senate? Perhaps you can have a look into the proposal from CRA. Having done that, could you also kindly tell us, as wananchi, if you think what Senate did was a win-win for all Kenyans, and if you don't think so, why? That is the question, Madam Rosemary.
Thank you. I think, again, thank you for inviting the Council of Governors to this conversation. Devolution has truly come a long way, and devolution is working, as the CS has reiterated. We've seen a lot of movement in terms of sector development, in terms of intergovernmental relations, in terms of the policy and legislative environment in the devolution space. Devolution is a baby. We are 7 years in, and what we saw in the last, I think, about 6 months is what would happen in any other devolved jurisdiction. I think finally, we, as Kenyans, we are very happy that a formula was reached, or a basis actually. The Constitution talks about a basis, that a basis on sharing of revenue was reached. The good news is that no county is going to lose, because that is what was the goal of
potential, that there are counties that were going to lose money. But with this new formula, there are no counties that are going to lose any money. So there's a 53 billion extra for all the counties when we apply the formula. With the new formula, of course, it takes into context issues of land area, issues of poverty levels, urban services, roads, and population. But I think the most important thing as Kenyans to note and to look out for is, where are these resources going? Are the resources that are sent to counties being utilized for purposes for which they were intended? That's the most important thing. Because devolution, we adopted devolution so that we could have equitable distribution of resources, so that Mandera is not different from Kajiado or different from Nairobi, that we ensure that every Kenyan can access health services, has a road, can access water, can access education. Those are the basic tenets of devolution. So even as we, even as parliamentarians and politicians take us through what you're calling the razzmatazz, we must never really forget about the goal and the objects of devolution as enshrined in Article 174, that it's about taking the resources back to the people. It's about ensuring an equitable society, that nobody is left behind at any particular point. So that is what we need to focus on. So whether you are a politician, whether you're a practitioner, whether you're a professional engaging in discourse about formulas and bases, that is what really, really matters, because that's what devolution is really about. So that is what we Wananchi need to look out for and say, okay, the formula was passed, we have a basis. The County Allocation of Revenue Act has now been passed, so money is supposed to go to counties. But the question is, what will that money do? We need to ensure that that money is actually utilized, as I said, for purposes for which it was intended.
Thank you very much, Rosemary Njaramba. I can see the incoming member of parliament for Kitutu Masaba, Samba Areba, is looking at you. He's looking at you, and in light of what the CS for devolution said about corruption in county governments, he did not mention any specific county government, but he was at pains to explain that there is corruption which is getting deep-rooted at the county levels. As Council of Governors, do you agree that corruption is the new norm in county governments? And if you do, what is the Council of Governors doing? Because from the grapevine now, this is not from the CS, it would appear that devolution now was targeting the governors, the CECs, the MCAs, and the top echelons of the county governments.
I think corruption is not an issue of county governments or an issue of the national government. That's not what corruption is about. I think corruption is a societal issue as Kenyans we need to face, and stop looking at it like it's a problem of counties, therefore counties need to be fixed, or it's a problem of the national government, therefore let's fix the national government, or it's a problem of whoever. I think corruption is a societal problem. It's our problem. It starts with me, that when I am stopped by a traffic cop, I don't stand there and negotiate to give him 1,000 bob so that I don't go to court. It starts with us. And I think when we understand that corruption is not about other people but ourselves, so that when you're put in a position of leadership, you understand the role the reason why you're there, whether you are a president, whether you are an MCA, whether you are a governor, whether you are a CEC, whether you are a minister, whichever position you're in, it's a matter of upholding the constitutional values that you seek to uphold or which you are obligated to uphold. Values of integrity.
Sorry to interrupt you, Rosemary. My question was very specific. Are you concerned as a Council of Governors? I know you may not speak at the policy level, But do you think the Council of Governors is concerned about corruption in county governments? That is the
Yes.
question.
Yes, we are very concerned. We are concerned that there is corruption in the counties. We are concerned that there's corruption everywhere. So that's a concern for us, be it at the county level, or be it at the national government level, be it at the private sector level. Of course, corruption is a concern for us.
Thank you very much, Madam Rosemary. I'll address the next question to our panelist who is joining us online, Mr. Elijah Ambassa. My question to him, I don't know whether, oh yes, I can see him. Karibu sana, Mr. Elijah Ambassa from Westminster Foundation of Democracy. My question to you is on what appears to be duplication of roles. The fourth schedule of the Constitution elaborates the function of the county governments. However, there appears to be duplication of roles. We have, for example, the county commissioner vis-a-vis the governor. We still have chiefs. What is your comment on that, taking in regard the Constitution was trying to remove the national government from county roles? What is your comment on that, Mr. Ambassa?
Thank you, thank you so much for that, and I want to thank LSK for the opportunity to come and share my views on devolution. One is that when I was told that this was about devolution, I was very happy because I was part of the task force on devolved government that originated the 6 devolution bills as a task force, which we shared with the CIC then. So sometimes when I sit back and see the implementation of devolution taking place, what comes into my mind is what was our intention, especially when we, as the task force, originated the 6 devolution bills, they are currently laws. Yes, that's a very good question. Mine is one, the transfer of functions under Article 187 of the Constitution. To start with, in my honest opinion, that the Transition Authority did not do a very good work as anticipated. Secondly, I also don't think that there is only challenges. There's no duplication as such in relation to the question that you've asked, where we have the county commissioner, we also have the governor. We all know that the former provincial commission was, or administration was to be restructured to accord with the existing structure. The national government must also have their footing at the county level, and therefore the existence of the county commissioners and regional commissioners. The most important thing, in my opinion, is that the national government, under the National Government Coordination Act, provides for the functions of national government at the county level, including the functions of county commissioners. The county government have their functions provided for under the 4th schedule, part 4 of the 4th schedule of the Constitution. And I believe that the execution of the functions by both levels of government should be done in good faith. That the county governments are supposed to do their work as provided for under the 4th schedule, part 2 of the 4th schedule, and the national government also does theirs. Again, under Article 186 of the Constitution, the functions are clustered in terms of one exclusive functions. Now, for part 1, 4th schedule of the Constitution has functions to national government. Part 2 of that schedule has exclusive functions of the county government. There are also functions clustered in terms of concurrent functions. So the concurrent functions needs to be done in a way, for example, disaster management. If something happens in Nairobi County today, that maybe something is burning, fire outbreak somewhere, both the national government have a role in a way. So the national government, when they have, if they have something to do to put out the fire, in the spirit of concurrence or conjunction, or even an outbreak like the pandemic, the COVID, that government will not sit down and wait. The national government those functions that are either not exclusively for county governments, and in one way where classify or transfer functions was done, they were either not touched. Those residual functions are supposed to be done by the national government. So the spirit, I would say that the spirit uh, the Constitution of Kenya 2010, one that cuts across, is cooperation and consultation. And it must be done in good faith. So I don't see a situation where duplication of functions. And if there are duplication of functions, what I will talk about that we have seen county governments coming up with, and Waziri talked about the own source revenue. And we've seen that county governments are coming up with multiple taxation. If you are a trader and you are transferring your goods from Mombasa to Busia, then you need to have you need to have a license, uh, advertisement license from, if your truck is coming from the port of Mombasa, for Mombasa County, Kwale, Makueni, Machakos, Nairobi, Kiambu, Nakuru, Kericho, Kisumu, Siaya, until you are at Busia. You see, now for the purposes of business, we have seen that that is also one way where in the pretext of wanting to also raise as county governments are really in a way coming up with punitive taxation measures which are not are not supporting business. And under Article 174 of the Constitution, one of the objectives of devolution was also to help in economic growth through supporting it. So in terms of duplication of functions, I see national government have their roles when it comes to issuing out licenses, trade license. Trade is devolved, but there is aspect of trade which the national government still do, and it affects the manufacturing or the business industry. And just finally to talk about, Waziri talked about ease of doing business. Waziri, ease of doing business is the process. That is well. But the cost of doing business in Kenya is astronomically rising every day. So the cost of doing business, what needs to be addressed at both levels of government is the cost of doing business. The ease of doing business is a process. The registration process is easy. That is well. But in terms of cost of doing business, that hasn't gone well at both levels of government in this country. So that's how I would respond in terms of functions, duplication of functions. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Elijah.
Mr. Elijah, as a follow-up question to what you've said, and I'm impressed that your mind is so clear on what devolution was supposed to achieve. There is a discussion, you've mentioned regional coordinators. There is a discussion at some level of this country that the 47 units of counties that we have are not economically sustainable and viable, and perhaps we should collapse them onto about 15 or around that number of units that are viable, or we have another tier of devolution called the regional governments that are going to superintend county governments. Do you think this is a serious argument, or this is an idle argument, Mr. Ambassa?
Thank you. Thank you so much. As to whether we are two tier, we are national and county, but whether we need a third tier, I am a proponent of a third tier, and these are my reasons. One is that we have seen a proliferation of county regional economic blocks. We have 14 of them as we speak. We have the LREB, the Lake Region Economic Block, about 14 or something counties forming that. We have Jumia, the one from the coastal, we have the one from the northern Kenya. Now, if you see, the reason why the reason or the rationale behind these county regional economic blocks, one, it is because we have counties that cannot, when it comes to raising their own revenue, they are relying 100% from the vertical allocation. Now, that is very serious because we want counties that can stand on their own. We are also seeing a situation where when we have regional governments, the third tier, we are going to benefit from the economies of scale in terms of infrastructural development. For example, if for example Bungoma County wants to procure tractors, and I see they procure sometimes from if they're procuring from China, wherever the tractors are coming from, and the neighboring county Busia also wants to do the same. Kakamega wants to do the same. There's a way in which these three counties can come together, procure the same commodity or the same item in a manner that will help counties realize the benefits of economies of scale. The other thing is that I've talked about conflict of laws at the county level. Conflict of laws. We are seeing that when you are in county X, they charge you, if you are in business, they charge you this, for example, say advertising license, and the other one in the other county you are not charged, or in all counties you are charged advertising license, and you are operating within a county, or you are charged this per sub county within a county. So even in terms of harmonizing legal and policy framework, regional governments will have in harmonizing legal and policy framework at the county. But the most important thing that, in my opinion, regional governments will do is they will address the issue of economic development. For example, with your indulgence, I've heard that Kericho County wants to build an airport. Now, we have an airport in Kisumu, and there is a rule that there is a Kenya Airports Authority rule, or whichever rule, which talks about 100-kilometer radius. So from Kericho to Kisumu, it's less than that 100-kilometer radius. But you see now, counties wants to come up with airport. Kericho wants to come up with airport, and there's an airport in Kisumu, not an airstrip. There is an airport in Kisumu. So we are saying that to coordinate, for the purposes of coordinating development within counties, so that even cross-county roads, and in fact, I've seen a place in Kiambu County. I work in Nairobi and I stay in Kiambu. And I saw there was a road that was done, and from Nairobi, when it was just approaching the border between Nairobi and Kiambu, the road stopped. I mean, the road stopped. So the guys from Kiambu side cannot enjoy. Sorry. Yes. So regional governments will harmonize or ensure that developments within the counties in a way is harmonized. I'm one proponent for regional, the third tier. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassa. Perhaps we would later on get another person with probably a different view, but thank you very much for the reasons given. Over to you, Erin Kabita.
Yes.
Sorry. We are actually proceeding to Eric Theuri, the chairperson of Nairobi branch. And the Nairobi branch extends all the way to Kiambu and Thika. So it's a huge branch. It's almost the same as the Nairobi Metropolitan, but slightly smaller. Eric Theuri, you heard Waziri Eugene Wamalwa mention that while putting in place the infrastructure of devolution through the Constitution and the County Government Act, we were able to devolve corruption, unfortunately. As a practitioner in this field and as a Kenyan citizen who is keen to see devolution working, these complaints of corruption, complaints of nepotism are rearing. They are very ugly aids from these county governments in a lot of cases. What do you think are some of the existing gaps legally, socially, politically that perhaps we should address? Kindly recommend, kindly give recommendations on how we should address this from a legal perspective, from a social perspective, from a political perspective.
Thank you so much, Bernard. First of all, I want to thank you for including me in this panel. Although, quite frankly, when I look at the eminent speakers who I am sitting with, I was at loss as to how I qualified to sit here, except for the fact that I do practice devolution at the LSK, and I thought maybe that is perhaps the reason why you have put me here. When, of course, I heard Eugene Wamalwa is coming, I had to wonder how I'm going to perform in his presence, considering his Queen's language. But I would say this, that whereas it is true that we appear to have devolved corruption to the counties, we must also not lose sight of the fact that the counties have enabled us to achieve certain milestones within the country that hitherto had not been achieved. So there is the opening up of the country. There is the cascading of resources to the larger part of this country. And there's an increased form of citizen participation in determining how those resources are going to be employed. But true, the challenge of corruption is one that is not just facing the county, it's also facing the national government. And in my view, it is not the absence of the laws to handle or deal with corruption. It's really a question of the lack of the political will to fight corruption. And I say this because the drama that ensues every time we have a corruption case or arrest leading to a corruption case, there's a lot of drama with it. Why do we create that drama? We create the drama to enforce the perception that we are actually fighting corruption. But if we look at the real, the question of walking the talk, you can tell that the government is not keen on fighting corruption. Why do I say this? The fight against corruption cannot happen effectively without sufficient resources to support the fight against corruption. Of all arms of the government, the arm that is charged with ensuring that the suspects of corruption face or have their day in court is the judiciary. But if you look at the systemic budgetary allocation, for the judiciary, the budget allocation keeps going down. For the executive and parliament, the budget keeps going up. So that is the irony, and that is the lack of political will that is lacking. So we can shout from the rooftops, we can have very, very glamorous and drama-filled arrest of corruption suspects, but until we put our money where our mouth is, we are not going to win this war on corruption. So the perception, and everyone knows it is a perception. So you walk in, you sleep in the cells, you walk out, you know that that trial will never call you to justice. It is that encourages and thrives the culture of corruption. So if we are serious about dealing with the culture of corruption, then we must put our money where our mouth is. We have 41 judges that have been pending appointment for the last probably a year or 2 years for no good reason. The same government that wants to fight corruption, using law to fight corruption, is not keen to obey court orders. So we must all speak in one language. It's either, in this country, it is the rule of law, or it is the rule of man. Because the moment we send disjointed messages, we are not going to win this war on corruption. Thank you.
Still on you, Mr. Chairman. The Constitution underscores the need of transparency in governance. We have Article 10, which lists the national values and principles of good governance. The Constitution also provides that counties there will be an oversight of the counties with the Senate. Do you think that there is proper oversight so that corruption should not be a vice that is still continuing?
Well, in my view, I think yes, because I think the 7 years when we've been truly had devolution, we've had quite a contest in terms of accountability. At one point, the county assemblies were and the Senate appeared to be scrambling over the fight of who is actually going to oversight the county governments. But I think that as time goes by, and you remember we've had this contest where governors would refuse to submit themselves to the jurisdiction of the Senate in terms of accountability. But those, I think, in my view, were just contests of clarifying the law and looking at and ensuring that we then empower the institutions to do that. The ability of the county governments and actually the county assemblies to oversight the county governments appears, in my view, to be still at a very low threshold, because perhaps because of the legacy of the councillors and that mindset that has transited through, and so it has made it a bit difficult for the county assembly to be able to oversight the county, the governors. So I think, in my view, that is probably an area that we need to relook, so that we can empower the county assemblies to be much more effective when it comes to accountability. But again, you remember that there is quite an elaborate framework under the PFM Act in terms of how the counties are supposed to set up the short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans, the requirements for public participation prior to implementation of various priority projects that are being undertaken by the county, by the governors. So that also is an area where we need to capacity build the county assemblies, and I think also perhaps as the law society and the devolved, and this will be a challenge that we'll be throwing especially to ourselves as the chair, where we practice devolution, so that the other branches of the law society ought to probably be much more involved in the plans that are being set up within the counties where they operate, so that then we can be more active in civic education to ensure that the level of participation, because when we are talking about public participation, we're not just talking about a forum that was held, but we are talking about actual and meaningful public participation that has an impact. And so maybe this is an area which, as a law society and the branches, we can look at and see whether we can come in, so that we can even improve, do more civic participation, and improve the capacity of the citizens to interrogate the plans. Because if we start at that level, then we'll be able to probably get the county assemblies to do much more. And something else more interesting, and this is also for the lawyers, we've noticed I think the governor of Garissa the other day was charged for what would appear to be a question of failing to exercise the collective responsibility aspect of it, because it's a question of misappropriation of funds. And so as the governor, he is being charged in a manner, quote unquote, to say that he ought to have taken political responsibility. So that for me, I think for us as lawyers, is something that is going to be interesting, because if the governor is, you know, when you talk of misappropriation, you're not basically saying that money was stolen, but you're saying money was used for the project that it was not intended for. So, and so therefore, that is something interesting. We would want to see how that develops, because it might be an innovative way to sort of call governors to account. But then again, what would be the constitutionality of such criminal charges that appear to be seeking to ask the governors to take political responsibility over such actions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Eric was wondering why he's in the same panel with eminent personalities. But perhaps, Eric, when Honorable Eugene Wamalwa ascends to the presidency, because Grapevine asked it that he might be going for the presidency into the future, you'll probably be the CS devolution. That is why you are seated closer to him. Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, your good friend of Akaranga calls you Eugen. I don't know why he refers you to Eugen as opposed to Eugene. Eric has painted a very sad picture of the fight against corruption. He's come out very strongly on two issues: that the fight against corruption, as undertaken by the executive, is more of drama, and high-profile drama for that matter, if not melodrama, because he says the arrests are only high-profile, and that is the end of it. He goes into an interesting conclusion by saying you cannot fight corruption by only using laws, but no funding. And he gives an example of the fight against the judiciary by the executive, where 41 judges, one of them are since passed on, may rest in power. He gives an example of 41 judges who have not been sworn in by the president. He also says the funding for the judiciary continues to wane. You're a top-notch lawyer in this region, not just Kenya, in the region. You also sit in the cabinet, and a very senior politician for that matter. I don't know if you would want to comment on that before I take you to your appropriate question.
Thank you very much. I think let me start by assuring Eric that I'm very happy to be here. And I didn't come here as a minister, I came here as a lawyer, and I'm very, very happy to be amongst my learned friends today. Because being a minister is just a privilege. You are given by your appointing authority, who is the president, and you serve at his pleasure. And as per his prerogative, tomorrow you may not be a minister, but I'll remain a lawyer. I'm very, very happy to be a member of the Law Society and to be part of this very noble profession. And to say that indeed, when you look at the war against corruption, I agree with what Rosemary said. It's not a government issue. It's a societal problem. And it's something that we all need to look at and work together to rid our country of this cancer. If we're going to leave it to the national government or leave it to the county governments, we will not succeed. It will take all of us. Like Chinua Achebe said, it takes a village to raise a child. It will take the entire society to get rid of this cancer. It will take a change of attitude so that we know that this is something we must all fight together without politicizing, without ethnicizing it. We must institutionalize the war against corruption for us to succeed. You've talked about presidency. Indeed, I had declared my aspirations in 2012. I was one of the candidates then, but out of the team of several of us who aspired, I did endorse President Uhuru Kenyatta during the TNA launch, those of you who are there. And I made my reasons very clear. I had two reasons that amongst the candidates who sought to lead this country, two things that stood out about the President Uhuru was his commitment to fight the twin evils of corruption and tribalism. And I'm very proud to serve this president and this government, whose 8-year journey you can see a consistent commitment to fight tribalism. And you've seen the president's efforts to unite the country, to bring the country together over the last 8 years that he's been leading this country. Up to now, including the last general election that was very divisive, and it almost tore our country apart. And it led to the handshake of 9th March 2018 that has brought the country back together. On the second issue of the fight against corruption, the commitment he made, if you look at this administration, compared with previous administration, I do not think we have had the political goodwill from the top as we do now in terms of fighting corruption. This president has made it very clear to all of us, including those who are privileged to serve with him, that there will be no sacred cows in this government. If it happens that you have dipped your hand in the till and you're caught, even if you are his minister, even if you are his brother, you will not be protected by this president. And you can see in the last few years, the high-profile arrests and prosecutions that are ongoing. Compared to other African countries, I think looking at the commitment this president and this administration has shown, that cannot be questioned. When you also look at the institutionalization of the fight against corruption, when you look at the GJLO sector, actually the steady increment of resources and support to this sector has been there. Just go over the last 8 years and you will see that. In terms of strengthening the institutions, right now the office of the DPP, the office of the DCI, the office of the EACC. I think these institutions have received more support than they have in previous administrations, and the commitment of the president to support these institutions cannot be questioned. I think all we need to do is urge other leaders to show similar commitment, starting with those who serve with him. Going to the 47 governors. Governors must lead from the front. If we had the same commitment in the 47 county governments, we will begin seeing a very different picture as far as corruption is concerned. I know that Eric had talked about the judiciary getting some budget cuts, but if you look at what happened, it was across the board. And you know how our economy has been hit. And I know that it's not just the judiciary. There was budget cuts, even including in the executive. Many of the ministries, we suffered budget cuts. I think when there was an attempt to touch on parliament, it was a tough one, because you know that these are the fellows who will definitely have the last say. When it came to the governors, you do recall there was an attempt to bring down the figure to 310. They challenged, it was a tough fight, and Rosemary can bear witness. So it is something that we want to say that indeed we must support the institutions, we must dedicate more resources, and in the era of this political goodwill that is unprecedented, I think much more can be achieved. I think that's what I want to say, and to say that it will also take not just government, we must also look at civil society, we must also look at ourselves as lawyers, because we all play a role. It takes two to tango. When these people loot these coffers, where do they take this money? Lawyers, accountants, professionals like ourselves play a role in actually, cleaning this money for them. And this is something we also need to start doing some soul searching, starting with ourselves as lawyers, the law society, because we do know that indeed these fellows don't just do these things on their own. But also we must thank the current leadership of LSK. The commitment to the fight against corruption has been there. I think people can say many things about Nelson Harvey, but I think he's doing a good job with his team. I know that given the mandate of LSK, it is not their business to stand with the rulers, but to stand with the rule of law. And I think that as much as this might be, some of us might be agitated or even irritated, but they are doing their job, and they must stay on the side of the people. They must also stay on the side of the rule of law as opposed to standing with the ruler. So we want to encourage that we work together as a society, look at this as a societal problem, and ensure that we work together to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Eugene Wamalwa. Back to your next question. And many Kenyans and lawyers included are concerned that during the COVID-19 lockdown, cessation of movement as it were, especially within Nairobi, the CS Ministry of Health, Mutahi Kagwe, had an order or a cessation order announced by the president in what was called Nairobi Metropolitan District, which included parts of Kajiado, Machakos, and Kiambu counties, and of course Nairobi County government. This was interesting in many aspects, and a lot of Kenyans, lawyers included as I've said, were asking themselves, what was the basis of having this metropolitan district? What was the basis of defining boundaries? Because you could hear that boundaries are going to be at a particular place, and particularly now as the devolution CS, Honorable Wamalwa, knowing how you can extend boundaries constitutionally, is the government, for example, thinking about a policy to establish a Nairobi metropolitan under the constitution and the existing laws. And if that was going to be the case, of course, definitely would have to amend the constitution, and there are discussions about BBI and what manner of things. Kenyans are concerned. Are we as a government, when I say as a government, is because all of us support the government of the day. Are we as a government mulling about having a Nairobi metropolitan as opposed to the county government of Nairobi? You are the CS for devolution.
I think for clarity purposes, we need to know that the review of boundaries and the change of boundaries is a preserve of the IEBC, and it is the constitutional mandate that is taken within the period prescribed, and as we know, that time is coming. But faced with a pandemic, a health crisis, the Public Health Act also gives the Minister for Health certain powers to designate certain areas in terms of controlling movement, in terms of containing a pandemic, for the protection of all Kenyans. This does not, it's an administrative action that does not actually change the boundaries or the borders of the country or the counties. So it is really an action that was taken that really helped in containing the pandemic. In terms of the spread, I think there were several areas. It was not just Nairobi. Of course, Nairobi was the hotspot. And you cannot separate Nairobi from Kiambu or Kajiado or even Machakos here. Because they say if Nairobi, the sitting room, the bedroom is Kiambu. And I think one of us, our colleague Elijah, said he lives in Kiambu but works in Nairobi. So there are many people who do that. So administratively, action had to be taken to contain the spread of this disease. And it was not just Nairobi, we had Mombasa, we had Kilifi at one point that really spiked, and even Mandera. So I think that was taken within that framework of the Public Health Act, and after the situation was contained, I think that was lifted. But as to whether or not we should have a metropolitan area called Nairobi instead of Nairobi City County, it is something that is part of our national conversation through the BBI. I believe the initial draft had indicated that a time should come when we might consider Nairobi being like Washington, so that it belongs to all Kenyans, because it is the seat of, it's the capital of Kenya, it's the seat of government. It is also an area that generates almost 60% of our GDP. So every Kenyan, wherever they may live, have an interest in Nairobi. So, but that is a proposal that will have to be put before Kenyans in terms of the BBI, so that Kenyans will deliberate on it if, in their wisdom, they believe that in future Nairobi is too important to be left to a county government. Then that will be the decision of Kenyans. It's not the proposal of government. It is not my proposal as a Minister for Devolution. In fact, I would be very wary of a proposal of doing away with any county now, because having traveled to each county in Kenya, even a county as small as Lamu, if you try to touch it now, it will be chaotic. If you went to a county even like Vihiga, it's a small county, but if you try to scrap Vihiga County today and you tell them to go back to Kakamega, there will be a problem. So I think even as we look at these issues, as we have this national conversation, we should look at strengthening devolution. We should look at strengthening the counties. And one way of doing this is through the regional economic blocks. I've been working very, very closely with the COG, and we are developing the policy for regional economic blocks that will allow counties to pool together, to pool resources. The law allows them to have joint projects, and this is something that will enable them enjoy economies of scale. And I know that there's a proposal for a third tier of government, as Elijah talked about. There are also those who are vehemently opposed to another level of government being introduced now. I think those who feel that we can have the regional economic bloc serving the same purpose, because they make an economic sense. But as to whether they make political sense or not, that is a very sensitive political issue, and I believe in the ensuing debate after the BBI report is presented, it is something that Kenyans will want to express themselves on. So for now, I think we want to thank our parliamentarians, because as we speak, we already have a bill before the Senate by Senator Rose Nyamunga on regional economic blocks. As the executive, we met the senators recently, and we want to thank the Senate Speaker for facilitating this, so that we are looking at, as the policy makers, we are looking at how we can work with the executive, with the legislative arm of government, to be able to get this policy, to strengthen the policy and legal framework, in order to strengthen devolution. And one of these is that bill on regional economic blocks. And as we develop the policy, we want to work with the parliament as we work with the governors to ensure that this is in place. So let me thank you and say that for Nairobians, I think they'll have a say when this is put to them through the BBI. Thank you.
Waziri, as a further question to this, Wangare Kagai, who is a program officer, public interest litigation of the Law Society, is saying this Nairobi Metropolitan, as established by Mutai Kagwe administratively, almost had no scientific basis on its establishment. She still wonders that if this was not a very serious conversation that Kenyans should have, the president has moved on and has established a Nairobi Metropolitan Service and has allowed the Director General, Brigadier Badi, to sit also in cabinet meetings. She sees this as a very serious statement of intent at the top level of government to have a Nairobi Metropolitan Service. What we do not know is where the boundaries would be. Waziri, would there be demerits of establishing a Nairobi Metropolitan Service after through an amendment of the Constitution if Kenyans were to look into such a conversation?
So I think let me start by clarifying that there are two different things. What Kagwe did was just administrative, based on the health crisis, exercising powers bestowed upon him by the Public Health Act. However, the creation of NMS was a totally separate issue, and this was in accordance with our constitution and powers bestowed upon the president to either where there's a crisis in a county and perhaps there are exceptional circumstances, the president has the powers to suspend a county government, or as we did, the law allows the county itself also to transfer certain functions to the national government, and even national government to transfer certain functions to a particular county government. So this is allowed by the law. And you all know the situation in Nairobi. And you do recall there was a state of paralysis in the Nairobi City County. We had a situation where the governor had not appointed a deputy governor. We had a situation where the speaker had been blocked from office. We had a situation where we have a county government that had almost half of the CECs out. Then we had a situation where a governor is facing prosecution. And indeed, it is this governor who expressed himself on national television. I watched him on Citizen, on NTV, And he said, because of the situation he found himself in, he actually initiated the dialogue with the national government and proposed certain functions to be transferred to the national government. And we came in as national government to assist. And that is how NMS was created. But it's also created for a specific period and for 4 functions. So it is not that we have moved in to do away with the Nairobi County government. The Nairobi County government is still there. Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko is still the governor. And the metropolitan, as we speak, is something that has come in for a period to offer services transferred to it by the county government. As to whether or not we'll have this in future, as I said, this is a national conversation that Kenyans will have during these BBI engagement. And I believe Kenyans are going to express themselves, including Nairobians, as to whether or not they want a metropolitan. But you do recall that indeed in the past, I served in the previous administration, and we had the minister for Nairobi Metropolitan. You do recall the late Mutula Kilonzo, before he came to the Ministry of Justice. He was the minister in charge of the Metropolitan, and this did not still do away with the County Council of Nairobi that had a mayor, and they were running their business, but national government was managing the Metropolitan. So it is a choice that will have to be made, but it will be done democratically, it will be done constitutionally, and it will be done legally. Thank you.
Thank you, Waziri. Over to you, Herin Kabita.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kipkoech. My next question is to Madam Rosemary Jaramba. My question is on equality. The Constitution has 3 major themes, that is democracy, participation, and equality, among other things. We have Article 2 or 4 of the Constitution, which talks about Equalization Fund. We also have the CDF Act, which provides that 75% of the resources will be distributed equally. The CDF Act only talks about 25% of resources to be distributed on the basis of the need for affirmative action. My question to you is this: how then can we achieve as a country the equality, what the Constitution intended to do, so that services offered in Mandera can be the same services that are offered in Nairobi? Waziri talked about a bill on regional economic bloc, which is pending in Parliament. You can pick it up from there and tell us more on that.
Thank you, Herin. Yes, there's a bill in the Senate, the County Resource Development Bill 2020, and it has a sample format agreement of if supposing 14 counties want to set up a block, how would they do it? Because previously, when counties started forming regional blocks, there was no legal framework for doing it, and also there was no policy. So the senator has, developed a guide on what counties, for instance, the counties that want to come together, what can they sign? What would it look like? So that's what the bill proposes to do, which we support. But we're also keen on ensuring that the policy is finalized, because the policy will be very key. As we all know, that policy precedes legislation, so it would be very, very important that also the policy is finalized. I think there's something that was mentioned by Elijah about harmonization, just before I go to your next question. And sometimes we tend to think that we need to harmonize everything. We need to harmonize laws, we need to harmonize this, we need to harmonize that. But I think the purpose of devolution was also innovation. And we must allow county governments to innovate within their spaces, to innovate on legislation, to innovate on policy. As long as they are within the perimeters of the national standards and the national norms, I think we must be able to allow county governments, because they have legislative authority and they have executive authority. So we must allow them to innovate. Because different counties are in different spaces. Counties did not take off from the same level. The counties in the north are not the same as the counties in the south. The counties in the east are not the same as counties in the west. The counties that were cities are not the same as the counties that, for instance, were rural counties. So it's important, as we look at issues of harmonization, that we understand that counties are unique and that they will legislate differently. They will approach social economic issues very differently. On the issue of CDF, the CDF Act was nullified and declared unconstitutional by Justice Lenaula because for one reason. We have two levels of government, and there are cleared enterprise funds. There's a lot of legislation within in the county level around, it's a CDF model, but now a devolved format of the CDF model, to ensure that levels below the county, that is the sub-counties and the villages and the wards, actually have resources that respond to the needs of lower levels just below the county. So that's the first issue on the issue of money. On the equalization fund, I think maybe the legal fraternity is aware. There's been a little controversy with respect to the issues of the equalization fund. The counties believe that the equalization fund needs to go to the county governments directly. Currently, there was guidelines that were set up, and a board was set up to, determine projects that, benefit from the equalization fund. But those guidelines were nullified again by court because they were declared unconstitutional very recently. And so Parliament has been, requested to go back to the drawing board and really look at what was the intended purpose for the equalization fund. Because counties argue you can't have a board seated at the national level determining certain priorities on matters of equalization. It has to be done by the counties, because that is where a lot of implementation of health services, of water, of housing, of education really happens. So those are the dynamics that are currently happening with respect to these affirmative action funds. I think that basically covers it. But I think, Herin, what we need to know is that a lot of these funds, CDF or equalization, such issues have just ended up in court because counties believe we can't have a fund that does county functions. We have to ensure that whatever funds are set up respect the functional integrity and respect the two levels of government as is anticipated in the Constitution.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question to you, Rosemary. A common mwananchi in Mandera, would that common mwananchi still aspire to have services that are offered in Nairobi? Is that achievable?
I think it's achievable. Let me give an example. Mandera County, there's a constituency called Takaba. They did their first C-section in 2014, since independence. The first C-section in Mandera County was experienced in 2014 because of devolution. As the CS said, there are counties in the north that have experienced tarmac for the first time since independence. We have hospitals that have been able to undertake brain surgeries, open heart surgeries, because resources are finally going to the counties. We see instances where, actually my own mother told me that in her shags, they have water, there's connection to water. If they want connection to water, they can get it. ECD is no longer an issue. We don't have to wait for money to come from the top to facilitate or to rehabilitate ECD centers. there's so much that is happening that, as CS said, it would be very difficult to convince Mwananchi not to fight for devolution because of the gains that they have seen. Look at Makueni. You are able to participate directly. You are able to say, this is the project I want. And you're able to follow it on a website and actually keep somebody accountable to say, I gave you, you were given 10 million, you have used 5, where is the other 5? And that happens because of devolution. Because when you take governance closer to people, they're able to keep the people who they vote for accountable, so that you bring participation and decision making closer to the people, so then they're able to participate, they're able to feel we are part of this team. So I think devolution, if anybody would fight for devolution, anybody in the villages, anybody in the wards, anybody in the counties would fight for devolution. So it will be a very hard sell to reverse the gains and to reverse the ideology of devolution in this country.
Thank you very much.
Rosemary, as a further probing question to what you've just answered, and you've done very well. A lot of people in this country think that the greatest enemy of devolution after corruption and nepotism is the national government. And a number of examples have been given. One of them is the issue of delay in release of funds from the national government. Another one is meddling in county functions by the national government, and the issue of medical equipment, which is currently being looked at by Senate. We've seen high-octane investigations being done at Senate. Do you share in the view of these Kenyans that the national government has contributed a lot in sinking and rocking the boat of devolution?
I don't feel safe answering that question because I'm sitting next to the CS. Yeah, I mean, that's a very dicey, tricky space to be in because I'm seated right next to him. And he's a minister for devolution. But come as it may, that's a very good question, Council. First of all, we were a centralized system for 50 years. And then you come and then you separate this one unit into 47 little units. And then there were people who were used to this system and they benefited from this system and they enjoyed this system. And then you come and tell them, no, I'm breaking you up and taking you in different spaces. The first thing you get is resistance. So in any change management, in any transition, there will always be people who will resist change. You cannot expect to move from a unitary system to 47 county governments. Now you have 48 governments. You used to have one, now you have 48 governments. And then expect everybody will be happy and they will clap and they will go along. And no, it won't happen like that. One, you've moved resources. So there is a basket that has moved. So definitely that happened. Having been in COG for 6 years, the first generation was very, and the CS knows this, was very confrontational because we did a big bang release of functions. We didn't phase it. So the counties felt, I want my functions, and then the national government felt, I'm not really, it's a big brother, I'm not really ready, to give. It's like when you get a sibling, you are getting all the attention, mommy was there for you, daddy would buy you toys, and then another child comes, and then the attention also seems to shift, so it's, oh my God, what do I do now? So there's that space of, there's a new kid on the block. We have gone to court severally on matters of violation of the Constitution with respect to clawbacks, where we have felt that Parliament has passed legislation undermining devolution and infringing on certain functions on devolution. I'll give you a very good example. We have gone to court on roads. Essentially, Class A, B, and C of roads is supposed to be the national government, and then D, E, and classified is supposed to be county governments. But you'll find some roads, some classifications of those roads, the national government still wants to hold on to them. So issues of functions have become a really a source of controversy in this space, you know, issues of roads. We've been in court on issues of water. We've been in court on issues of equalization fund. I've just said that. We've been in court on issues of healthcare, MES, as you said. Because counties were feeling, why would the national government want to choose for me a dialysis machine? Why would the national government come and tell me I need a radiology machine? Did you ask me I need it? You can't come to my house and tell me what I need to shop for. So those issues are still there, but they're expected because it's a system that is growing. But also, I think it's important to note that in this second generation, intergovernmental relations have really improved. We've seen an improvement in how the two levels of government relate with each other. We talk to each other much more than, you'd go to meetings and people have folded arms the other side, But now we're seeing an improvement because at the end of the day, we are serving the same nation and the same objective remains, which is devolution. So we've seen an improvement, quite an improvement in terms of intergovernmental relations.
Thank you very much, Roslina. I'm sure Waziri would reassure you that you're safe and is going to protect you, notwithstanding the views which were initially being, the situation that was being experienced on matters devolution and relationship between the national government and the county government. Waziri, you would have a chance later on to probably give your comments on the same, unless you want to address them now.
No, just to thank Rosemary for keeping her enemies, her friends close and her enemies even closer. Because when you say the national government is the enemy, then I checked I was the closest to her. So I think we're joking with Eric here. But just to acknowledge what she has said, I think intergovernmental relations are at an all-time best since we started. It's not been an easy relationship between the two levels of government. It was an adversarial kind of relationship when you look at the first two governors. The chairman, Isaac Ruto, was a very tough chairman, and so was Peter Munya. But from Nanok to Oparanya, I think we have improved relations. We've all embraced the spirit of Article 6 of our Constitution in terms of consultation and cooperation. And we all know that we might be two levels of government, but we are really the same government, serving the same 47 million people in our 47 counties. And it's about service delivery. It's about the two levels of government working together to better the lives of Kenyans through service delivery. So I think we're doing well, but it is true that also there are some challenges. Though we have developed all the functions, there are some areas where there are challenges. And I think the issue of roads, there's also the issue of regional development authorities that counties are now filling with the regional economic blocks becoming a reality. Is there a way that we can restructure the regional development authorities because they will be serving the same purpose as the regional economic blocks? So this is a conversation we're having, and in the new spirit of cooperation and consultation, I believe we'll be able to sort out most of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Waziri Eugene Wamalwa. We now go to Mr. Elijah Ambassa. I don't know if he's online. Thank you, I can see him.
I'm online.
I can see him. This is the question, Mr. Ambassa. Recently, we've had a president setting rendition from our courts. The decision said that for matters oversight, if you're a member of the county assembly or if you are the county assembly, your oversight functions are limited to funds generated and raised at the county level. On the other side, the Senate has oversight functions on revenue dispersed from the national government. I say the decision is mind-boggling because some Kenyans and lawyers think that the decision is a bias of platitudes and at best academic. Do you think such a decision, Mr. Ambassa, is feasible? Is it implementable? And further to that, in your view and in your interaction with devolution in Kenya and in the region and perhaps internationally, do you think our members of county assembly have the necessary institutional and individual intellectual capacity to oversight devolution and county governments? Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Bernard, for that. Um, just before I go to that, there is something that I just wanted to raise with Rosemary. Rosemary, county governments are allowed to innovate, right? That is right, within the functions provided for them under the fourth schedule of the Constitution. However, that innovation is supposed to be done um, in a manner that frames existing laws, national laws and policies. We saw there was a proposed finance bill by Kiambu County government in 2014. I think in the financial year 2013-2014. And just to use your words, they innovated within their function and made proposal to tax chicken. This is not an innovation. This is an innovation that was challenged in court, and the petitioners won. Those are some of the innovations that I was talking about that needs to be harmonized. That as we innovate within the precincts of national legislations, like Public Finance Act, when you are coming up with proposals that goes into the finance bill at the county level. So that aside, Bernard has asked a very good question. It will be unfair in my own observation that county assemblies are advised that their oversight mandate starts and ends with the own source revenue or the funds that are raised within the county revenue raising measures. So for me, that would be one, it will be weakening county assemblies. County assemblies, if you use example, we have counties, like I mentioned earlier, that in terms of own revenue raising, they raise probably less than 10% of their budget. Some of them probably raise less than 5% of their budget. So if you tell county assembly that their oversight is only that 10% or less than 10%, then in a way we will be killing the spirit of devolution. Spirit of devolution also include having strong county assemblies, strong institutions. So county assemblies need to play oversight. So the executive. And it is my own observation that county assemblies need to even be stronger. Because if you are a county assembly, for example, the finance committee at the county assembly was to summon the county executive committee for finance and ask questions. How will this county assembly committee start ask questions that relate to only the funds that were raised locally and not the vertical allocation? That kind of advisory ruling is limiting the potential, limiting the expectation of institution when it comes to county assemblies playing their oversight role over the county executive. Now, and I also think that the current challenge that we are facing in terms of oversight at the county assembly level is probably as a result of our own making in terms of our constitution. Um, we have members of county assembly, majority of them, who do not understand, majority of them who do not understand what oversight means, and therefore we have an executive that overrides the legislature. I know that the problem of executive overriding the legislature at the county level is acute. I also understand that the same happens at the national level. While that is something that reverberates, or something that takes place even in most African legislatures. In our case at the county level, we need to ensure that we help, um, we nurture our county government institutions to be able to do their work. So I am one of the person who believes that county assemblies need to have all the platform and the latitude to be able to question, to raise oversight issues with the executive, regardless of whether I mean, the issue being raised by the county assembly was as a result of grant by the national government, it was a result of that national, the vertical allocation, or it was a result of funding from county on revenue. So they need to, and that is the only way we will build and nurture the nascent institutions at the county level. Then you ask a question about whether county assemblies have the power to be able to, they have the capacity to be able to do this. The current county assembly, I think there's a lot of improvement from the first, the county assembly from 2013 to 2017. It wasn't good like the current county assembly. The current county assembly are good, but I know, I believe that there's still opportunity for county assemblies, members of county assembly, to improve in terms of their oversight role. And I know that this is something that it might have uh, gone very slowly in terms of improvement, in terms of capacity, but this is something that we are seeing because we've seen improvement. So even in that, after 2022, we will see a more strong county assemblies than the current county assembly that we have. But we need also to support these nascent county government structures and cushion them from attacks from both sides. I mean, whether from enemies, from across. You know, let's cushion and safeguard their existence and allow them to work and build their capacity to be able to do their work without minimum, I mean, with very little interruptions from different directions. I know that in Africa, you do not test the depth of water with 2 feet. But when we came, we decided to go devolution. That is what we were trying to do. We did as a country. We have not drowned, but these are teething challenges in terms of addressing a new architectural framework in terms of governance. And that is, so these challenges are just few challenges. We have not drowned as a country, but I believe that there is room to improve. And of course, something that needs to happen is on the Elections Act. I always believe that there is a there is a proposal to cap or have educational qualifications. Uh, I mean, put higher for those who are seeking to be elected in the position of members of county assembly. If that is something that is viable, I believe that can face a lot of legal challenges. But you see, sometimes we have to face it for us to realize development sometimes, because oversighting the executive at the county level is not a small thing. The governors are very strong. Some of them are professors, some of them are lawyers, some of them have ministers up here at the national government level. And when they go there, um, then to be questioned on issues of county fiscal strategy paper, which has originated executive, and you have an MCA who doesn't have a seat in the budget committee, budget and appropriations committee, and probably doesn't understand what is this county fiscal strategy paper, what is the intention of the county budget review outlook paper, what is it in, it's in. So sometimes you need people who are technically sound to be able to match uh, the executive at the county level. That could be my thinking in terms of improving oversight at the county level. Thank you, Bernard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassa. Perhaps as a follow-up question, in the last in the last 5 or so years, we've seen mass exodus of governors, members of the county assembly, and several top-level officers of county governments traveling to Israel. Some of them have been going to the United States, some of them to Singapore and various countries. And when you find out what they are going to do, we've been told that they are going on a benchmarking trip on waste management and disposal. What is your comment on that? And is there a way in which this mass exodus to go and study or benchmark on waste management and disposal can be dealt with without spending so much money plundering public resources, Mr. Ambassa?
Thank you, Kelly. Benchmarking is something that has been borrowed from the National Assembly or the National Legislature. We've had it before. I've had an opportunity to work in the Kenya National Assembly in 2010, and benchmarking is something that the county assemblies have borrowed, at least to count one of the things that the county assemblies have inherited from the national legislature is benchmarking. And even in the current national parliament, that is both the Senate and the National Assembly, there's a budget for that. And we still see members of the National Assembly or the Senate doing these benchmarking studies. Now, the problem that, or the challenge that we've seen in county assemblies is that, one, the numbers have increased. So we no longer have, for example, the 400. Nationally we have, I think, about 417 legislatures, but now we have so many, almost 1,400, almost 1,500 members of county assemblies. And if each county assembly wants to send a delegation to Israel or Germany, now that will start raising eyebrows. And this is something that I would want also to challenge the county assemblies forum, that the county assembly had a bad name since 2013. And it is incumbent upon the county assemblies forum to ensure that they objectify the myth of overspending or misappropriation that has dogged the name of county assembly since 2013. That county assemblies have had a bad name, that even if they do something good, what comes out is that they just went to bask in summer or winter somewhere in Germany or England, you see. So my proposal is that first, county assembly forum needs to help address this. COG is doing very well, and you can see what Rosemary is doing. They're doing very well in terms of profiling their work and public relations and all that, and it's working for them. And so that when they do a good thing, however small it is, that good thing is seen. So even County Assemblies Forum has a role to ensure that whatever good thing they do, that good thing is seen and properly profiled. Now, I have said that this is something that county assemblies borrowed from the national legislature. What is important is that through the Office of the Controller of Budget, we have these offices, Control of Budget. I think when it comes to benchmarking, and it is for an important reason, then why not? We need to have state-of-the-art county assemblies, county assembly committees. Why not? As long as the approval process and the rationale, there is proper rationale and justification for benchmarking, there is no problem. Because as I say, as at now, even Senate and National Assembly still going for benchmarking. I know. Now, the other thing is that we have counties that are doing well. For example, if you want to do benchmarking on public participation, why go, for example, to the US when, for example, Makueni County is doing very well in terms of public participation? So there is a lot that happens within county governments or county assemblies, so that there should be benchmarking within these 47 counties also. So there's something that Kitui does well. For example, there's something that on open government partnership that Elgeyo Marakwet is doing well. Why, if you want to do some benchmarking around open government partnership on legislative openness, why do you go to out of the when, for example, Elgeyo Marakwet County is doing very well on that? If you want to benchmark on the use of geospatial data to either increase accountability, we've been talking about corruption. Vihiga County is doing well. Why would, for example, we see Taita Taveta cross over to Vihiga and learn what they are doing when it comes to geospatial data? So again, there is a lot of capacity to leverage among these counties without necessarily having to spend a lot of money to go to fly out of the country and sometimes just go shopping in those places and come back with the technical staff, the county assembly secretariat. Those are the only people who learned. The rest went shopping. So I think this benchmarking can be done in a manner that, even if it is out of the country, in a manner that see the sense of value for money, and there are also opportunities for county assemblies to also learn from other counties that are doing well in different sectors. So I think that, Wakili Bernard, will be my response.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassa. You're very measured and guarded in your observation. It sounds to me like these benchmarking trips are taxpayer-funded luxurious trips for members of the county assembly and others, which is very worrying considering the objectives of devolution under Article 174. Waziri Eugene Wamalwa, would you want to comment on these benchmarking trips as the CS for devolution?
Thank you very much. I think I'm on record as being one of those opposed to these very expensive benchmarking trips. First of all, because of the fact that little is achieved out of these trips. But if we were to benchmark locally, and I remember we had a meeting in Makueni where all the governors came, and there are quite a number of good things happening in Makueni, and we had every reason to learn from Makueni, and I believe each governor took away, had a takeaway from Makueni, and it was more relevant than finding MCS from a county like, in the region where there's a lot of rain and going to a desert county benchmarking with very little relevance to their counties or their country for that matter. But looking at the local situation, looking at what Makueni has done right, you can say we've gotten it wrong here. There was an example of a hospital in Makueni that Governor Kibuda Kibwana used just about 200 million or so, and it was fully equipped. And I know of a county that has used over R1 billion shillings, and that hospital has, as we speak, has not been operationalized. So the people who came from that county looked at this hospital, looked at what could be achieved with 200 million shillings in Makueni, and asked ourselves, where did we get it wrong? There was another county that had used, I think, about 150 million, building a beautiful governor's mansion. And that governor has a wife and maybe 3 kids. So 150 million serving a family of about 4, living luxuriously in Kenya, in a county that is very poor. Yet Makueni, with 200 million, a similar amount of money, you have thousands of people, mothers, children, getting world-class healthcare because of a prudent utilization of funds. I think I want to encourage that we do more peer review locally than going abroad. The other issue I also want to encourage, and I said this when I was in Bungoma recently, the issue of the scorecard. Each governor, each county government being able to give, of course they need to give the state of the county address, but also give a scorecard to the people that elected him. And in the process, inviting other counties, other governors to come and learn from their successes and their failures. There will be much more benchmarking within this framework than using a lot of money, getting air tickets, expensive hotels in Europe, when this money could have been utilized locally. But also, we know that there's been an element of blackmail. Talking about corruption, corruption is also in our assemblies, as I said. We know that for governors, even to get some of their matters approved by the House, they are blackmailed. They have to do a lot in terms of actually bribing members, or the expensive trips. We have this committee and we're saying we have 9 members going to Dubai. So by the time they come, they have been softened and they are able to approve very quickly what they were resisting before. So I think corruption takes more forms, and these benchmarking trips is really one of the forms that we are seeing corruption being perpetuated in our assemblies, and this is, I think, something that we would want to discourage going into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Waziri. Over to you, Herin Kabita.
Thank you very much, Kipkoech. I'm still on the issue of corruption, and my question is directed to Chairman Theuri. We have said corruption is one of the biggest challenges to devolution. We have mentioned also the national government as forming part of the problem. More specifically, we have political leaders and governors, just to mention, who use their powers to deprive the Kenyan citizen their resources. Many governors have been charged with various counts of corruption in courts. On the part of government, we have mentioned the Nairobi Metropolitan Services. There is an agreement purportedly entered between the national government and the governor. That issue is before court. We as the Law Society, We are part of the parties in that court. This agreement defies the Constitution, particularly the fourth schedule. It purports to transfer various services which are to be offered with the county to the national government. We have an elaborate chapter, chapter 6, which talks about integrity. We have Article 2, which talks about the supremacy of the Constitution, Article 3, which talks about the need of all state organs to uphold the Constitution. My question to you is this: how do we get state organs, the national government, the county government, just to uphold the ideals of the Constitution? The law is there. How do we get them to uphold and implement the Constitution as it is? Secondly, Waziri has talked about people being bribed, county assembly members being bribed. I mean, how do we live up to what we are required to do in the Constitution? My second question would be, we have various institutions in our Constitution that are charged with the responsibility of accountability. I'm talking about, for example, we have the anti-corruption body and such like things. How do those bodies, have they stepped up to prevent corruption? You can take that.
Thank you, Herin. That is quite a loaded question. But on corruptions, for me, there will be two issues. There will be the individual responsibility, and then who bears the highest responsibility. So for me, the government bears the highest responsibility as the enforcer of laws. So we have laws, but those laws mean nothing if they cannot be enforced. So that is how I would approach it. That we as citizens, yes, we have the responsibility to obey the law. But the law is there for those who, to one, ensure that there is social order, and two, when the law is not complied with, then the executive, as the bearer of force and threat, should therefore ensure that that is enforced. So I want to say that I don't think that we are doing well, but we can improve. One of the things that perhaps is a running theme and has been mentioned by the speakers who have spoken before is actually the capacity of the county assembly to hold the governors in check and ensure that there is accountability. So perhaps one of the things we need to look into is, probably the county assemblies now need to professionalize their own departments so that, the way you have a very competent parliamentary budget office that is able to then synthesize budget policies and make it easier for the MPs to buy it. I think we probably now need to get to that level. We get more lawyers, more professionals into the county assemblies so that they are able then to interpret, get more economists able to interpret some of these policies and ensure that the capacity of the members of the county assembly to oversight the governors is increased. I wouldn't want to speak so much about the NMS issue which you have raised because one, I'm aware it is in court, and two, there is also a court decision which has sort of regularized the arrangement under which the NMS was set up. But I think constitutionally, the transfer of power is something that, on either side, is something that is recognized. And so the question perhaps would be then whether the constitutional provisions have been complied with. I certainly have my doubts as to whether there might be a proper framework for the transfer of function. So if there is an absence of a proper framework, maybe is is legislation the way to go, so that then we are able to operationalize or breathe more life into the constitutional provisions with regard to the proper exercise of transfer of functions. I would want to also agree with Waziri on the need to institutionalize and the peer review mechanisms. I think going forward we need to get to this level where our leaders at the national office, at the national level, should actually now be coming from the county governments, so that those governors who excel in leadership at their counties should now be going to running for national office, so that we have this, we are able to then vet we are able to then vet and have a scorecard of how well they performed. Of course, it's obvious that some of the governors have been held handicapped, have been held actually not hostage, and are handicapped when it comes to passage of, for example, budgets, because the members of the assembly are keen on getting their pound of flesh before those plans or the budgets by the governors are passed. And this is, I think, a systemic problem that can be cured through such mechanisms as peer review. But ultimately, the enforcement of the law would be the cure to most of these problems. So I think as a country, we are still struggling with the aspect of how to breathe constitutionalism into the laws that we have. We have the laws on paper, but the spirit is lacking. The spirit of those laws is not flowing through the citizenship. And it is a struggle that as a country we must take. It is a struggle that as a law society we must champion, because the more we institutionalize the concept of constitutionalism and obedience to the laws that we set up, the better that we will be as a society in managing the ills that confront us today.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Over to you, Bernard.
Thank you very much, Madam Erin Kabita. Ladies and gentlemen, that marks the end of Thank you very much. Sorry for the for that interlude. Salome Odero is the incoming women representative for this county. So I had to give a few seconds, Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, because if I didn't do, perhaps next time I come to Nairobi, I would be declared persona non grata. We've come to the end of the directed questions to our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had Honorable Eugene Wamalwa in our panel. We've had Mr. Elijah Ambassa. We've had Rosemary Njaramba from the Council of Governors, and of course the chair, Nairobi branch of the Law Society, which I mentioned extends all the way to Kiambu, Thika, and environs. He's not just the chair of Nairobi County. His jurisdiction covers several counties. We're now going to take questions from the plenary, and our panelists are very ready. The incoming Member of Parliament for Kitutu, Masaba, I'm told has collected several questions from social media. Panelists, we are live on social media. A lot of viewers who are members of the public and lawyers have been sending questions. Mr. Samba Hareba is going to ask a lot of those questions because he's been collecting them. And I am going to give him the first opportunity to pose questions. Incoming Mheshimiwa Kitutu Masaba, you have to shoot straight, but since I know ordinarily you are a radical politician, but because this is a lawyer's forum, I know you know how to do it. Thank you very much, Mheshimiwa.
It is not true that I've collected questions, but it's true that I have questions. My question, first of all, will be directed towards the CS and the representative of the COG. When I see us on 3rd of, that was March 2020, while in Busia, you did indicate that one of the strengths of devolution was that counties were to interdepend on each other. And now the background of that is that we have seen the formation of regional blocks. From the word go, of course, we have the LREB, we have the NOREB, we have the Jumuiya ya Pwani, we have this, I think the SEC. And I've had the opportunity to work with the LREB during its inception. But unfortunately, what counties plan to do at the inception, it is not, the vision is not carried all through with the transition. I'll give you an example. In 2017, we did host a very marvelous conference in Kisii, which was named the Lake Region Health Investment Conference. And the objective of that conference was to ensure that counties are able to invest in health. Let's say if Bomet County has invested in, let's say, heart transplant, Kisii County should not duplicate the same. And very good resolutions were developed from that meeting, which had representation from all over, from the ministry, from the Health Federation and everything. Came the 2017 elections. After that, the governors who came in power, nobody did follow up on what happened. Recently, again, there was another conference in Bomet. But unfortunately, it's becoming more as a talk show. And I know you support the interdependency of counties, which was an objective of devolution. What is the ministry doing? I know this issue is before the Senate and there is legislation that is coming. What is the ministry doing to ensure that, one, there is the regional blocks, number one, they are operationalized. I support that. And number two, that there is some kind of continuity, so that it's not about the vision of Governor Paranya, it's the vision of the LREP. It's not the vision of Governor Mutua, it's the vision of that region. Because all along, we're seeing governors come and go, but then the vision is not carried along. But remember, a lot of taxpayers' money is spent on consultancies, it's spent on workforce, but at the end of the day, the economic blocks, the regional economic blocks are remaining shells. So what is the ministry doing? And also from the Council of Governors, are we having some kind of support to ensure that it's not a talk show? Remember, like the LREB, it has a full secretariat. I mean, the people are being paid salaries. By the end of the day, we are not seeing anything coming out of it. Is it just another moribund blocks? Even if we were to bring in the BBI issue and we operationalize another tie of government, if then we don't walk the talk, at the end of the day, we're not going to achieve the objects of devolution. Thank you, and I'll be looking for answers. Eugene, CS, you know you have been my neighbor for so long, but at least today I found you.
Thank you, Mr. Areba. I can see Madam Wakesho. Please, Madam Wakesho. We will take Madam Wakesho, and then we will come to you. Thank you.
Thank you. My question is to Mr. Elijah Ambassa. And for me, one of the greatest concern I have with county assemblies is the issue of discipline. You know, we see on the media how, people, the fights and just the craziness, chairs being thrown all over. So, what solution do we have for that? Will we wait until we see a member of the assembly die for us to, for them to rain discipline on themselves, or for the executive to rain discipline on them? Should we then think about situations where, we have mechanisms to recall an MCA of that level of indiscipline? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Wakesho. There was a question here. You will kindly mention your name. Mike, please.
Thank you. My name is Neri Mawere. I have two questions for Mr. Amba and Honorable Wamalwa. And thank you for your presentations. They're very well received. So I just have a question. We are in the middle of a global pandemic. Well, not really in the middle, at some stage of it. we're not quite sure. But what I did want to understand is you did highlight issues around cooperation and coordination with regards to devolved functions, and particularly functions that are shared at one level or the other. So Schedule 4 is quite clear with regards to health on what policies is required by the national government and what county government should be doing in terms of the health function. So you mentioned the medical equipment scandals as one of the issues of an encroachment of functions. And I've been seeing in the process of this pandemic response, there has been this seemingly a lean towards paternalism by the national government with increasing, and I think this is a dual problem, with increasing updates from the national government and with the policies and the framework guiding the pandemic itself coming from the national government, despite the fact that we know fundamentally to prevent a pandemic of this nature, it's going to be preventive and promotive health, which would require primary health functions as sit to the counties. And we haven't seen many county governments stepping up to the plate of actually addressing the issue within their counties, whether with information or any policies put in place. We have policies coming from the national government on continuation of services. They're not being translated in county government. That has meant that someone like women and girls being affected with reproductive health services, not being able to go to a county hospital because you don't know that you can go, because your county hasn't said anything, but national government have a policy that says you can go. So you say that your communication is improving. Why are we not seeing it now, at a time when we need actual clear communication between the two levels of government to guide us through a pandemic? Because consistently we're getting complaints from people, we don't know where to go, how to get there, which hospitals are available, and you can't wait for Mutahi Kagwe in Nairobi to tell us when we have a governor who should know this and who should be providing us with the information clearly on how to do this. So in terms of health and other shared functions, what does coordination actually look like in the conceptual framework? What does cooperation look like in the conceptual framework? And what should citizens expect from this shared relationship?
Thank you very much, Mary Mawere. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mary. I will, is that Waweru Gishoi? Yes, Mr. Waweru Gishoi, and then we'll go to Caroline Mudiani Mudeu.
Thank you so much. My question goes to one, the CES, Rose, and my senior chair would also attempt at answering. I'm referring to the judgment given by Justice Weldon Korio, indicating that governors might have to relinquish their post 6 months prior to running for any presidential seat. He further said that even MCAs might have to do the same before running for an MP post. Does this create a vacuum legally? And what is the view of the devolution in light of promoting devolution in the country? Lastly, to the CS, goodbye Nairobi County. Which county is next? Like father, like son, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta killed devolution in 1964. Is the son planning to do the same in 2020? Rest in peace, devolution. Remember Article 187, 2B. This is a tweet by Senator Ledama Olekina on the March 18th, 2020. And from the view of majority of members of the country and to a common mwananchi, the same question I would want to ask to you is, which county is next for the purposes of NMS and such transition powers as those? I'd also asked to find out, was there public participation undertaken to make sure NMS runs, were the members of Nairobi County, myself included, undertaken through a question of whether we needed to NMS at that very point, not in any way conflicting that NMS has worked for us Nairobians. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Waweru Gishoi. I will go to Caroline Mudiani Mudeu, and then we will come back to the panelists to answer questions. I can see the CS is ready to go, but I'll seek your indulgence, Honorable Eugene. We go to Caroline Mudiani, and then we...
Okay,
Caroline.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kipkoech. My question goes to the CS, Honorable Wamalwa. And my question is in regard to devolution. First, we thank you for the good work that you have done. But my question concerns the counties which, the governors, or rather the counties which have still not achieved the devolution purpose. I'm happy to come from Makueni, where I would say that at least the governor has done a lot for the people of Makueni. But when I look at a county like Lamu, I still feel like the people are suffering, and many other counties out there, you'll still find like issues of healthcare is still a very serious issue for them. So, Honorable CS, what strategy do you have to ensure that devolution is achieved not only in some counties but in all counties? Because now it's 10 years down the line, and I feel like some counties are still not have achieved anything at all, or if they have achieved just a few things. So what is your strategy to ensure that devolution takes place everywhere? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Caroline Mudiani Mudeu. Panelists, most of the questions are directed to CS Eugene Wamalwa. Everybody has posed a question to Eugene Wamalwa except a few. I would start then with the CS, and then I'll give subsequent directions. Waziri.
Thank you. I think starting with the first question on the regional economic blocks, I think as we had said before, this is a very, very important development towards strengthening devolution. I agree with Caroline that indeed some counties on their own have not done very well, but included in a bigger block, they can do even better because of the economies of scale that come with that, and the lack of duplication. Looking at, say, Ukambani, we have Professor Kivude Kibwana with a fruit processing plant there. This is a factory that gives market to mango, mango growers, and it has such a capacity that we do not have enough mangoes in Makueni to satisfy the need of this. And we working together with the other counties, they can be able to bring their mangoes to this processing plant. And we do not need a similar plant within the same block. Similarly, in Kitui, we have Governor Ngilu, who has Kikotech, where they are manufacturing now uniforms for the national government. They are also doing masks and all this. And also making uniforms for school-going children. So we do not need a similar factory in Machakos. Machakos, Makueni can actually buy from Kikotech in Kitui, and they can bring their mangoes to Makueni. And this is how we're going to grow the local economies. This is how we are going to strengthen these blocks, that the counties can work together and enjoy the economies of scale. And similarly, when you come to healthcare, when you look at, take an area like Western region, we have a major hospital that Governor Oparanya has put up, one of its kind in the entire region, going all the way to Uganda. So it will make this a cancer center. It is a center that can serve the entire region because it will have the necessary experts and equipment. So we do not need a similar one in Busia or in Bungoma. We can have a different one that would now specialize in something else. And this is something that we are working very closely with COG to ensure that we operationalize these regional economic blocks. As we speak, we are finalizing the policy. But already the Senate has gone ahead and we have a bill. As I said, we are already engaging the leadership of the Senate, and we will very soon operationalize this. Ideally, policy precedes legislation. The bill should follow the policy. But working together with the Senate, working together with COG, we are going to strengthen that policy and legal framework that will now ensure that as a region, even if a governor serves for one term and leaves, or another governor is serving a second term, the shared vision that will bring a greater benefit to the region will still not be lost. The economies of scale will still be enjoyed even by subsequent governments that will come into place. There was the issue that Wakesho asked about, the issue of indiscipline. Indeed, it is a very worrying area when you look at how our county assemblies conduct their business. It is something that is totally unacceptable, because these are not councillors. These are actually legislators who should behave like honorable members. I think as the ministry in charge of capacity building, I want to say there's more that can be done to build the capacities of our county assemblies so that they are able to perform better. But also the law allows for a recall. The recall clause is there. It is something that also several counties, we've seen petitions being signed. It's something that can be done to bring discipline in our county assemblies, because as we're increasing funding to the counties, we also need to increase the caliber of leadership in the county assemblies to be able to handle these billions that are going there, to be able to oversight. So that's something that we'll also need to work with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, because it's also an issue of integrity. These are matters that the law actually allows EACC to take on errand members. So it's not that we lack the laws. I think it's really an issue of enforcement. And in some areas, we know that some MCAs who have fought have been summoned to Integrity Center. And I think they just need to do more so that honorable members are able to conduct themselves honorably and to discharge their mandate honorably. When we come to what Mary had asked about the global pandemic, I think in terms of intergovernmental relations, as I said, they are at an all-time best. And faced with an unprecedented crisis, and we are not just talking about a health crisis, it is also an economic crisis, because our economy has taken a lot of battering. And we are trying to still reopen the economy, get back on track, look at post-COVID strategies. But when you look at how we responded as a country, I must say, as the Minister for Devolution, I'm very proud in terms of the intergovernmental relations that brought the two levels of government to work together very closely in the middle of this unprecedented crisis. We have never in a single year had back-to-back summits, the two levels of government sitting together, all the 47 governors, the president and the CSs. We were able to do this almost 4 times, back-to-back meetings, and we looked at this pandemic together, and we were able to work together. When you look at the structures that have been put in place now, indeed we have strengthened the structures for intergovernmental relations. And we also do have policy and legislative interventions that are following, that are coming out of this pandemic, that will go beyond the health crisis that we are facing now. Because as we speak, we have a raft of amendments to the County Governments Act, amendments to the Intergovernmental Relations Act, so that we can have closer cooperation between the two levels of government. We did not have before a structure where the governors can engage with cabinet, but we have been able to now introduce that, and those amendments are coming to Parliament, so that we have the NDICC sitting with COG, thrashing out all the matters that are affecting the two levels of government, so that by the time we are proceeding to the summit, we have actually thrashed out most of those issues. We'll also have, particularly in enhancing delivery on the Big Four agenda. Largely, the Big Four agenda are devolved functions. When you're talking about health, you're talking about food security, you're talking about planning, urban planning. These are all devolved functions. But they are so critical that the two levels of government need to work together for us to achieve the Big Four agenda. And I want to thank His Excellency the President for the leadership he has provided. Through these summits now, we are working closely together to ensure this succeeds. And even during the pandemic, Perhaps Mutahi Kagwe was more visible as the minister in charge of health, but equally Governor Kuti, the chair health, because at all levels that we adopted the new structures, we had both levels of government working together, shoulder to shoulder. So for health, we had Governor Kuti, the COG chair health, working together with the CS Mutahi Kagwe. That was the main committee. And because we also have an economic crisis, we had the CS in charge of the National Treasury working together with Professor Nyongo, Governor Wangamati. So all the governors were involved at all these levels. At the county level, we had the governor and the county commissioner co-chairing the emergency teams on the ground. That's why you are able to see very smooth operations running right from the county to the national. And we want to encourage this going into the future so that the two levels of government can work together. There might be two levels, but we are one government serving the same people, the same 47 million Kenyans in our 47 counties. So once we realize that, you will not say these are the people of the county, these are the people of national. All 47 million Kenyans belong to all of us, and both levels of government have a duty to serve them and to ensure service delivery to all Kenyans wherever they may live. On the issue of the judgment by Justice Weldon Korir, in fact, I had my good friend Governor Mutua complaining because he has presidential ambitions. And he said he's going to challenge it. So I don't want to go much into that because it's something that is before the courts. He wants to challenge it. But I think when you look at that ruling, it makes sense, I think, going into the future. I think the last 6 months of a governor who's planning to run for presidency, it is a period within which, of course, he must be released to go and do his campaigns. He must also be checked so that to ensure that also there's no abuse of his position to advance his personal ambitions. So I think looking at that ruling, it makes sense. And on the issue of the Nairobi Metropolitan, may I reiterate again that this was initiated by the county government of Nairobi because of the very unfortunate circumstances that faced the county. A lot of Kenyans might not know the paralysis that was setting in. And what concerned all of us is the breakdown, the meltdown that was happening that would affect service delivery. Ultimately, as a Nairobian, I wouldn't really care whether it's the left or the right hand serving me. What I want is service delivery, and that must not be compromised. So where performance, where paralysis sets in, the law allows the county government to seek assistance from the national government. The Constitution allows that. Equally, there are counties that the national government can transfer functions to. And this is something that is provided for. The only issue which I want to agree with Eric is that we need to strengthen the procedures, because the Constitution allows, the law allows, but the process is something that we are working on. And really Nairobi set a precedent, but as we speak, and this is one matter that we are working very closely with the Senate to develop the regulations that will make it easy and very, very clear in terms of procedures to be followed for any county government that wishes to transfer some of its function to national government, but also for national government to transfer some functions to some county governments. I think this is something that Chair Nairobi, we want to work on to ensure that the regulation, the procedures are followed, so as with the enabling legislation, those constitutional provisions that allow for transfer of functions is made easier. And this is not for politicians, those who would want to look at it as a way of killing devolution. It is not. I think the objective of devolution is really service delivery, to ensure service is delivered. And if anything happens that can affect that delivery, then there must be some remedial measures that can be put in place to address that, so that no county should suffer. And we turn a blind eye and say, no, they have their own government, let them sort themselves out. That must never be allowed to happen. The first time this happened, you remember in the first term of Professor Kibwana, when the MCAs sought to impeach the governor, and for the first time, the president had to step in to form a commission to inquire into the matters of Makueni. We are happy that Makueni overcame that challenge, but it took leadership. But where there is failure of leadership, we cannot allow a county to die or people, Kenyans, to suffer because of failure of leadership. Professor Kibwana is one of the best performing governors. He was my teacher. Maybe some of my classmates who are here were also taught by Professor Kibwana constitutional law. We are very proud of him and the pace he has set in Makueni in terms of service delivery, in terms of public participation, and allowing the people of Makueni to participate and determine matters according to their own priorities. So I think I would want to leave it at that, and to say that we are happy to be here to engage further on these matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CS Eugene Wamalwa. We still had a few questions for other panelists. Madam Rosemary Jaramba, I suspect that the CS could have addressed some of the questions, but he could mention something in relation to some of the questions.
Thank you. I think the first question to me was about the continuity of the leadership in regional blocks. The lack of a policy and a legal framework has really curtailed the growth of these regional blocks. First of all, there are those that actually really want to do projects, but they suffer one problem. Money comes through to one county, that is through the county revenue fund. So pooling resources becomes difficult because the legal framework did not anticipate that counties would come together to pool resources to do a specific project. So that is why the bill at the Senate and the policy are so critical, because they will assist the regional blocks to be able to pull together money and do and be able to withdraw. And for instance, there was a county LREB that wanted to do a project, but they faced a hurdle at the controller of budget. Why? Because the controller of budget said I cannot approve withdrawal of funding because I don't know this entity. So for purposes of legitimacy and to give these bodies legitimacy, it is important for the policy and the legal framework to actually be finalized, because in the EAC, whether it's Kibaki or whether it's President Uhuru Kenyatta, we still remain in the East African Economic Bloc. And whatever commitments Kibaki had made to the bloc, they still continue with the rest. Why? Because there's a framework that allows the continuity of government. It doesn't matter whichever president is there, you remain in EAC, you remain a member of the African Union, you remain a member of the UN. So that's the same thing we anticipate, that once the legal framework is set, it will anchor regional blocks in a framework that allows the continuity, and so that leadership is not focused on personalities. The second issue on the coordinated response, as Waziri has said, I think this is the first time in a long time that we've had three summits in one financial year. We've had financial years where we've had no summits. So I think the pandemic brought us together. It brought the two levels of government together. It is unfortunate that we were brought together by a pandemic, that it is a pandemic that forced the two levels of government to, up their game in terms of intergovernmental relations. But that has really been useful. As you've mentioned, we've had committees that are co-chaired by the two levels of government, food security. I think there is there's an economic committee, and there's a security committee that are both that are co-chaired by somebody from the national government and somebody from the COG. So that has worked out very, very well. With respect to, there was an issue, I think, by Caroline about counties being in different spaces. I'm not of the school of thought that there are counties that have not done anything. I think there's something that has happened in every county. It's just that maybe we don't see it, because there's been money that has been going to those counties. So whether it's, maybe one county has one health dispensary and another one has 10, but something has happened. So there's something good that is happening in every county in different facets, whether it's education or health or roads. There's something good that is happening in different counties. And because they all started from a very unique and different, very different socio-economic statuses, then they're moving at different spaces. But I believe, from where I sit, that there is, if you walk around in every county, you will find something that has changed. They may not move at the same pace, but you'll find something different. I think on the issue of devolution being killed, it's interesting what he read out about the when we first did Majimbo and it was killed. But there are two ways of killing devolution. One, you stifle counties of resources, and two, you claw back on their functions. I think what is important is having institutions that are able to oversight the national government in terms of ensuring that they enable devolution to thrive. For instance, COG, we have gone to court on issues of resources. We've gone to court on issues of clawback. And I think LSK is a very important institution in ensuring that the national government complies with the constitutional principles of devolution. Especially, I think there's a devolution committee. I don't know whether it's still alive. But other than the Council of Governors going to court, there has to be other bodies that are keeping national government in check. Because it's true, devolution can die. If they don't give you money and they pass legislations that claw back on your functions, definitely devolution will be affected and it will not thrive. So I think there has to be concerted efforts from the players in the devolution space to ensure that the national government is kept in check in sending funding, adequate money to counties, ensuring that there's no clawback in terms of laws, and challenging those issues before court to ensure that we preserve and promote the objects and principles of devolution.
Asante sana Dada Rosemary Njaramba, watazamaji wa Kenya na mawakili wote na wageni wetu. Nafikiri tumekuwa na wakati mzuri sana. Kuna makubaliano kwamba ugatuzi umeimarisha maisha ya Wakenya. Isipokuwa tu sasa tumesema kuna changamoto. Shida iliyoko kwa sasa ni kwamba kuna ufisadi katika majimbo mengi, na sisi kama Wakenya tumekubaliana kwamba lazima tupigane vita, tuhakikishe kwamba hakuna ufisadi. Na jinsi ya kwanza ilivyosemwa ni kwamba Wakenya wenyewe waajibike, tuwachague watu ambao wanaweza, watu ambao wako na nidhamu. Vile vile tumesema si kazi ya serikali peke yake kupigana na ufisadi, ni kazi ya kila Mkenya, ni kazi yetu wenyewe tupigane na ufisadi. Basi tukimaliza, ningependa kuwashukuru tena wazungumzaji wetu hivi leo, na kwa sababu ningependa kumaliza, nataka kuwakaribisheni tena, niwapatie dakika moja tu kila mmoja wenu. Tutamaliza na waziri, kama bado uko na jambo ambalo pengine ungeweza kulitaja tukimalizia. Asanteni sana. Nitaanza na mwenyekiti wa shirika la mawakili tawi la Nairobi aweze kutoa hoja zake za mwisho kwa dakika moja.
I was actually hoping that that you will not ask me to speak in Swahili, because my Swahili is really the deep Swahili one, and since I do not want to leave anyone behind, especially my good friend and council member Bernard, who is likely to be my boss in future. I do not want to offend him at this time. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for this opportunity. I think I agree with the summations by council member Bernard. We have had great strides with regards to devolution. I think at this point it is a baby that we really cherish, because we've had opportunities, exposure to opportunities that would have taken us a very long time to achieve. And so we just need to guard against the vices that might be creeping in. We learn and build on the successes that we've had. And I think that the challenge is on all of us to ensure that we realize the dreams of devolution. Na kwa hayo machache, see, I know Kiswahili, huh? I can see Roslyn is surprised.
Asante sana mwenyekiti. Nitamkaribisha dada Rosemary Njaramba, alafu Elijah Ombasa upande ule mwingine, alafu tutamaliza na waziri Eugene Wamalwa. Rosemary.
Thank you. Thank you so much to LSK for having a session on devolution. I think my plea to the committee is also, we also entrench devolution issues in our CPDs, because we need to just increase our knowledge, even as professionals, as lawyers, on matters devolution. So thank you so much again for this very useful discussion. My parting shot is that devolution is working. We need to protect it. We need to fight for it. We need to ensure that it's not undermined. And devolution is not about individuals. It's not about a governor. It's not about an MCA. It's not about a CEC. It's not about a minister. Devolution is about service delivery. That's the reason why we overwhelmingly voted for it. It is not about personalities. It's about ensuring that the basic services, health, water, roads, education, every single person in this country has access to those essential services, that no one is left behind. So let's not forget that. Let's not focus on people, let's focus on the objects and the objectives of devolution.
Shukrani Rosemary Njaramba. Nitamkaribisha ndugu Elaya Ambasa kutoka upande ule mwingine. Elaya, bado uko nasi?
Thank you so much, Wakili. Kiswahili is not my portion, especially at lunchtime. Yes. First of all, I want to thank LSK for this opportunity. In fact, this is now what we call taking LSK to the people. Devolution touches the people. It is at the nerve center of everything that happens to the people. So thank you, LSK, for taking LSK, bringing LSK to the people and handling issues that affect them. My parting shot is that the Constitution of Kenya 2010 removed the adversarial relationship that we used to see in the old order and brought in the principle of cooperation and consultation between levels of government, government institutions at both levels of government. And the principle of cooperation and consultation is what needs to grow to ensure that the evolution succeeds in Kenya. And even though, like I said earlier, that in Africa you do not test the depth of water with 2 feet because you can drown, I am happy that as a country, we started a new journey in 2010 with a new constitution. And even though we are facing little challenges here and there, that there are remarkable progress on devolution. that we can put our hands on. Some of them were ably mentioned by Rosemary. So thank you so much, and for reaching out to people and being a friend to the public. And kudos to Nelson Harvey and his team for this good work. Thank you.
Asante sana Bwana Elijah Ambassa. Sasa nikukaribisha Waziri Eugene Wamalwa. Waziri, hapo awali ulisema kwamba 2013 uliweza kumuunga mkono Uhuru Kenyatta akuwe rais. 2022 utakuwa na maneno mengine?
Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to share in these very robust discussions. And I thank LSK and the president of LSK, my good friend Nelson Harvey. And I want to congratulate him and his team for successfully storming Parliament and having a cup of tea. There are those who thought probably having a cup of tea was not really storming, but history has it that sometimes a cup of tea can bring a revolution. You know, the Boston Tea Party. So don't underrate what Harvey did, having a cup of tea in Parliament. I want to just thank my colleagues, panelists that we have shared these discussions with, and our two moderators for ably moderating this important topic that touches every Kenyan, 47 million Kenyans in all our 47 counties. As we celebrate 10 years of a new constitution, the greatest gift to Kenyans, or the biggest fruit of the 2010 constitution is really devolution. It's what we are discussing here today. And looking at our journey as a nation, I want to say that devolution really holds the key to the success of our national journey towards transforming our country, towards a more just, towards a more equitable, towards a more inclusive nation called Kenya. Devolution really holds the key. I believe that in the last few years that we've had the new constitution implemented, that we've had devolution implemented, we have seen growth, we have seen development in almost every part of our country that we had not seen before. So we have every reason, even as we meet here, to celebrate that as we celebrate 10 years of our constitution, but also appreciate that we still have challenges. This is a 7-year-old baby that still needs to be nurtured, needs to be matured. And as Chinua Achebe said, it takes a village to raise a child. It will take all of us to grow devolution, to protect devolution, to defend devolution, and to ensure we achieve the objects and principles of devolution enshrined under Article 174. It will take all of us. The challenges that we are facing, as I said during my opening remarks, the biggest threat is corruption. And this is something that we all have to look at and support the president who is leading this fight against corruption from the front, and get the governors also leading from the front in the counties. It's the only way we're going to win against corruption. But also, more importantly, we want to thank the LSK for discharging your mandate of ensuring you protect the Constitution and constitutionalism and the rule of law in our country. And this is something that we want to appreciate going into the future, working together. And even in the war against corruption, we want to urge LSK to join us in this fight. Because corruption is not just in the national government or in the county government. Corruption is in our entire society, including professionals like ourselves, lawyers, bankers, accountants, valuers, engineers who are out there. We are aware of inflated bills of quantities. We are aware of variations and tenders going out there. This is how corruption is perpetuated, by professionals like ourselves. And the French President de Gaulle once said that sometimes war is too serious to be left to the generals. The war against corruption is too serious to be left to just government, county or national government. It will take you, the lawyers, all professionals, and all of us working together to deal with this societal problem. I think that is one thing, one plea I want to leave with you as we close, but to also say that going into the future, we have a great opportunity, and LSK has been on the forefront during the quest for the new constitution. When you look at our journey in constitutional review in this country, we have had great lawyers leading from the front, lawyers like Paul Muite, Martha Karua. We have many of you here today that would want to urge you to take that torch and run with it. As we have this national conversation, we would like to hear the voice of LSK in the BBI conversation, in the national dialogue coming before us, and in particular, as Rosemary has said, if we don't personalize these matters. Because looking at what has gone to the counties, if we were able to increase it from the current 15% and double the resources to the counties, but also put in place mechanisms to protect, because as we devolve these funds, we are also devolving corruption. They say funds or resources follow functions, but also the sharks follow the resources to the counties. As we're increasing, we're actually devolving corruption. So we would also urge you to be our partners in ensuring that we protect devolution against the threats. The last issue I want to say is that just to urge the counties on pulling up their socks to ensure that they are able to contribute more in terms of own source revenue. They have more transparent mechanisms in terms of collection of revenue and ensuring that we are able to get this money to also help the counties. And lastly, we also know that we have very little going towards development. When you look at many of the counties, though the law requires them to put over 30% in development, not all counties are achieving that threshold. And if we are able to take this money to the county, and most of the money will just go towards recurrent expenditure, towards buying fuel guzzlers, and the money does not go towards development. That in itself defeats the objects of devolution under Article 174. So these are areas we'd like to work together with and ensure that we succeed. Otherwise, let me thank you once more, thank our moderators and my colleague panelists. Asante.
Herin Kabita.
Thank you very much, my co-moderator, Bernard Ngetich. We once again wish to thank our panelists for making time to be with us this morning. Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Devolution. Mr. Elijah Ambassa, Westminster Foundation for Democracy. Ms. Rosemary Jaramba, Representative of Council of Governors. Mr. Eric Theuri, the Chairperson, LSK Nairobi Branch. Asanteni sana. Let us give them a round of applause. My co-moderator, Bernard Ngetich, we're also very grateful. He has traveled all the way from Nakuru to be with us this morning. Tunasema asante. I now wish to invite Council Member Beth Michoma. She'll give us a vote of thanks. She'll also preside over a ceremony of appreciation. I request our panelists to remain seated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erin. To our panelists, asanteni. To keep quiet, thank you for being with us here today. Before I give my vote of thanks, we want to award you with certificates. So please let me have Wangari near me. Our first certificate goes to the CS Devolution. An advocate of the High Court of Kenya, we thank you very much for participating in LSK's activities, and your certificate shall be given to you by the convener of the PIL committee,
Miss Faith Odhiambo. So Faith, tafadhali. Give them a round of applause. Thank you very much, Keep quiet. Before you go away, Faith, we'd like the CS to get his 1 CPD point. Where is Brian?
Sorry?
CPD point. Thank you very much, Faith. Our next certificate shall go to Miss Rosemary Njaramba, and she will be awarded the certificate by the Deputy Secretary General of the East Africa Law Society, Miss Barbara Maloa. Rosemary, you shall be receiving the certificate on behalf of the Chair of the Council of Governors and also the CEO, Ms. Jackie Mogeni. We shall further send your certificate to the office. Thank you very much, Barbara. The next certificate goes to our chair, Mr. Eric Theory. Bernard, I would like you to award the chair of chairs with the certificate. Thank you very much. You can give them a round of applause. The next certificate goes to Mr. Elijah Ambassa, who is not here with us today. We shall send your certificate to the office. Thank you very much for being here with us. Now, for our moderators, we also have to appreciate you. Now, Caroline Mudheo, council member, you shall be giving the certificates to Mr. Bernard Kipkoech and Herin Kabita. Makofi ya council members wetu jamini. We can start with Bernard. The next certificate goes to Herin. Thank you very much. Now to my vote of thanks. We want to thank the panelists, the CS Devolution, Honorable Eugene Wamalwa. Thank you for being here with us today. Thank you for giving us the insights on devolution. We really appreciate you. Makofi kwake. Thank you very much, Rosemary, from the Council of Governors. We have noted the position of the Council of Governors in devolution and making sure devolution works. We really appreciate you, and the Law Society of Kenya can partner with you anytime to ensure that devolution issues are brought to the forefront. Let us please clap for her. To Mr. Elijah Ambassa, we thank you very much from the Westminster Foundation. The Law Society really appreciates your presence today. The Law Society also will partner with you anytime on any issues that pertain to our respective organizations. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Now to Chair Eric Theory, asante sana. Mimi nitakuongelesha kwa Kiswahili sababu nataka you learn it. Thank you very much, Eric Theory, for being with us today. You're always welcome. You know you're one of us. Asante sana. Can you give him a coffee kwa Eric? Now to Bernard and Herin, asanteni. You know you're always called to serve and you always appear. Thank you very much. Hiya, kwani council members our party? And to us who have been here in the room and to everyone who has been watching out there, the wananchi, fellow legal experts, fellow legal counsel, thank you very much. I urge you to retweet, to share this particular session to your various spheres of influence. Let us show that devolution works. Asanteni sana. We send you with the blessings of God, and we shall ask one of us to pray. I'm seeing Samba was very ready to stand up. Sasa ni wewe umefika hapa, tafadhali kuja uombe, tumalize.
In the history of LSK, this is the second time I'm praying this year. I think probably I'm meant to be a bishop, or probably I've been called to serve. I was called to pray during the annual general meeting, and I think the blessings of the Lord will continue following you. Okay, so let us bow down and pray. Our Almighty, we thank you for the blessings of this day. We thank you for our leaders who have been able to address us. We thank you for the Law Society of Kenya. We thank you for the President. We thank you for the council members. We thank you for the Secretariat. We have been here deliberating on issues that are pertaining service delivery to our people through devolution. Father, we thank you for having given us insights through the guests who have been here, and we've been able to share on how to not only ensure that devolution works, but also ensure that the people get the services. As we're going to depart for lunch, be with us. We pray that you bless our President, you bless the President of the Republic, you bless all our leaders, bless all the CSS, and bless Kenya. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I know there is lunch, right? So I'll take this opportunity to welcome you for lunch. There's no lunch in our homes. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.